Summit.
Hello and welcome to the 10th edition of the Emerging India series presented by ICICI Bank and CNBC TV18. Now on the series we're putting the spotlight on some stellar SMEs and recognizing their contribution to the Indian economy. And so as a build-up to the Emerging India Awards, we're bringing on board some stalwarts from India Inc. who will discuss the various issues that plague the SME sector. This week on the episode we're looking at the need for SMEs to go global and make their mark on international markets.
The micro, small and medium enterprise sector is crucial to the growth of the Indian economy, and the sector has been growing consistently in the last decade. But of all the factors that are key to the growth of an SME business, global expansion, followed by innovation and diversification, tops the list. Understanding the need to adapt to global marketplaces, Indian SMEs are keen to capitalize on growth opportunities in expanding markets and enter new geographies.
For over 2 decades now, he's guided many Indian companies about taking their businesses to international markets and about making their presence felt globally. This week on the Emerging India series, we're in conversation with Vijay Chandok, the president of ICICI Bank.
Vijay Chandok joined ICICI Bank in 1993 and has worked in the areas of corporate banking, small enterprises and retail banking. In his current role at the bank, he is the President of International Banking and Small and Medium Enterprises for the bank. He has been instrumental in the growth of the bank's SME business, which currently provides services to about 1 million customers worldwide. Indian SMEs saw a spurt in outbound investments before the global financial crisis, especially in the auto and the pharma sectors. But after the crisis, the SME sector had seen a pullback on plans of global expansions. In the recent years, Indian SMEs have started aggressively expanding their global reach, but there is still a need to create a stimulating and enabling environment that promotes SME growth not just in India but also in the overseas markets. Despite having a good presence in India, with saturated developed markets, SMEs are often left with limited options of other developing economies to invest in, which may not harbour a conducive business environment, and decisions are further fraught with issues of financing, lack of clarity on regulations and taxation policies, and a lack of a credible local partner to team up with.
The SME has to recognize that you can't eliminate risk, you can at best manage, mitigate risk to a point, and it's also, he has to keep in mind that there are some residual risks that is inherent in the attempt to go abroad.
This week on the episode, we bring on board Suhas Mehta of SMC Infrastructure to discuss the various issues that plague SMEs that are looking to establish their base in international markets.
Building India, building dreams. SMC Infrastructures in the last 2 decades has carved a niche for itself in the infrastructure segment. With water supply projects, sewage treatment plants, along with construction of bridges, commercial and residential buildings and other development projects, SMC Infrastructures has been a front runner in the field of infrastructure development.
We are working mainly in water sector. Basically water pipelines, water treatment, sewage treatment, municipal solid waste. And along with that, we started working into other areas of infrastructure. We are constructing concrete roads. There is a new technology called as ultra thin white topping. So those concrete roads are available for transportation for use within 10 days time. We have constructed the largest water treatment plant in Asia along with the French giant Degrimo. That was for Bombay Municipal Corporation.
The company has a significant presence in states like Himachal Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, West Bengal, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu among others. SMC Infrastructure has also tested international waters with a presence in the Sultanate of Oman. Their first project was the construction of water distribution networks in Sinau.
India was financially not supporting the infrastructure industry a few years back. So we started looking for options outside. So we explored first possibility of doing some business in Oman. So with our credentials in water sector, we could get one work over there. which was in Indian currency around 150 crore work. And that we completed well in time, and we got a good acknowledgement from government of Oman for that project. So we could get additional projects in mall construction, bridge construction, other pipeline works, sewage treatment and network works, etc. Now we are exploring possibilities of working in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. We are exploring projects only where the external funding is available.
With the limited resources available to SMEs in India, one of the biggest challenges that SMEs face when considering projects in the overseas markets is the lack of available funding.
The financial institution overseas do not recognize you as a new entry. You have to be supported by your Indian banking institute for doing business overseas. This is where the main problem is faced.
Lack of clarity on regulations and taxation policies and an absence of credible local partners to team up with further add to the woes of SMEs that consider expanding to global markets.
On that note, it's time for a short break, and on the other side, I'm in conversation with Vijay Chandok, the president of ICICI Bank. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the 10th edition of the Emerging India series, and I'm now in conversation with Mr. Vijay Chandok, the president of ICICI Bank. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chandok, when we look at the global space, there's of course been a lot of movements, ups and downs in the last many years. How has it changed for the Indian SME? Are you seeing more of them being more gung-ho about going abroad and, heading to foreign shores to set up businesses, to expand their operations there? Or is the Indian SME more happier, or rather looks at the Indian shore, at India being better to do business in currently?
So I think when you look at the picture in India for outbound investments, I think the story for SMEs is a little different from the corporate sector.
Yes.
SMEs, we saw a round of outbound investments take place before the global financial crisis. After the global financial crisis, there has been a big kind of a pullback, at least as far as the SMEs are concerned. 2-3 types of themes play out for the SME as far as, leveraging the global opportunity is concerned. I think the first theme is around getting integrated to the supply chain networks of global corporates. There are a few SMEs who've done that. They've done that quite well, quite successfully. And that's enabled them not just to supply whatever they supply to the Indian operations of global corporations, but some of them have actually gone out of the country, set up operations closer to the supply points of global corporations and supplied there, and they're doing okay. And the other kinds of companies that have sort of taken some advantage is exports.
So there's a lot of talks of startups in India currently, and especially a lot of technology startups. Are you seeing again a movement in that space also, looking companies again looking to go abroad?
Yes, we were looking at India's position with respect to spawning new companies, spawning SMEs, and it's interesting to note that when it comes to global rankings, India comes actually number 3 in terms of providing an eco space for startups and new companies.
Right.
And the space is growing very rapidly. It's growing at about 40%. When you think about the reason why it's happening, it's I think to do with the high energy of Indian youth. More than 70% of startups are run by entrepreneurs who are below the age group of 35.
Right, so a huge young population.
So I think that's really the energy of the youth is driving a lot of startups in India. And these startups, how are they trying to leverage the opportunity of tapping the global markets? Right. I think it's not so much about tapping global markets, but I think they're positioning themselves to tap global pools of capital. I think the way they've managed to do that is create a business model, business models which are fundamentally sound, business models which are efficient, and more importantly, business models that are scalable to harness the Indian consumption opportunity. Right. So such companies have been able to sort of make a mark in the global stage by getting capital pools from overseas investing into them.
When we talk of SMEs and them heading abroad, obviously it's not easy and it's not every SME's cup of tea, but the ones that have ventured outside, unfortunately at times things don't go as well as planned. How do they know? What are the signs that, okay, this is not working, it's best to just cut losses and get out rather than keep trying on that? What's your advice to companies there?
When you're thinking of going abroad, you should think about that only when you're fundamentally sound on your home market.
Okay.
I think it's very important to first be sound and healthy and strong in your home market before you think of going abroad. On the back of this base, the best way to do it is to think about allocating some amount of capital, some amount of resource pool out of your sort of total resource pool for such overseas investment. It's also very important to have a very sound business logic, extremely sound rationale for going outside. It cannot be a high level rationale, the market is looking good, there is, big opportunity there. It can't be at a high level. It has to be at a very, very micro level. And then on the back of this, it's very important to set mile markers. Set up your limits, set up your capital aside that you believe is okay from your side to make this overseas investment. Set up mile markers. Measure yourself. It's important to measure. It's not just about setting. It's important to keep measuring. How are you performing vis-a-vis your own milestones? How is the cash getting consumed that you have set aside for your investments? And when you find that it's deviating from your original set plan, evaluate then and there as to whether this is rectifiable, what is required to rectify it, is it reasonably possible to rectify it, and if you find that you're not able to answer these questions well enough, I think it's important not to get too emotionally connected with your idea. It's important to cut your position and try and make an exit as soon as you can.
So, Mr. Chandok, one final question to you before we head into a break. How should a SME de-risk itself from, being affected by any global event?
I think the companies have to recognize, the SME have to recognize that you can't eliminate risk. You can at best manage, mitigate risk to a point, and it's also, he has to keep in mind that there are some residual risks that is inherent in the attempt to go abroad. Considering this reality, like I mentioned a little while earlier, I think it's important for the SME therefore to earmark a cash pool that he's willing to put to work in the overseas market, and he should be conscious of the fact that the cash pool has got an unplanned component included as he goes and makes his business work outside. And then have mile markers again, seeing how you're performing against your own targets, your own aspirations, and then correcting them with interventions, timely interventions, sometimes difficult interventions, sometimes unpopular interventions, but you've got to take this. But at the end of the day, there are other mechanisms in which you can sort of also deal with risk. For example, it's important that when you're making these investments in the overseas market, your investment, your borrowings, your earnings and your costs are all harmonized in the same currency. So it's important to try and identify different types of risks and use tools and techniques that are established to protect yourself against those risks. But at the end of the day, there is going to be a residual risk. And the best way to do it is to ring fence the pool of capital you're willing to set aside from your core business, from your core operations to such overseas attempts.
Okay, on that note, it's time for a very short break. On the other side, Mr. Chandok and me are joined by Mr. Suhas Mehta, Director of SMC Infrastructure. We'll be right back, don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Emerging India series. I'm in conversation with Mr. Vijay Chandok, and we're now joined by Mr. Suhas Mehta, Director of SMC Infrastructure. Mr. Mehta, we were talking earlier and you were mentioning about how you are looking to expand overseas, but sometimes there are some constraints. Would you like to talk about that?
Typically for infrastructure industry, we come into picture when a government floats a tender, and the time frame is so small, like maybe 90 days or 150 days. In that spell, making a joint venture, going there, and it is not possible in that phase. So if there is a knowledge bank available, then it will be easy for us to go and work as a SME abroad.
No, I think he's made a very important point, particularly in the last few years. What we have seen is many countries have chosen India as a strategic investment in a trading partner. And they have not just articulated India as a partner of choice, but they've actually gone ahead and invested a fair amount of resources into actually fructifying this into action and reality. So they've created, for example, trade offices, they've created various kinds of associations, and some of the countries even provide very customized consulting assignments. So their task actually, and they run with targets, and I was pretty pleased to see that they run with targets to see if they are able to channelize a certain number of investments in a particular year, or value of investments in a particular year into their country from companies in India. So that channel is available. But that said, when you're running a business, even that is still high level. Yeah. You still need more micro connections, more micro understanding. So that could be a good, at best, pointer, as to what could be a short list for you to do business with, or which direction should you be putting your attention more. But to actually, put money behind that pointer, put money behind that idea, put money behind that partner, I think some more physical presence, some more engagement, some more understanding of the local entity you're dealing with. It could be a stakeholder, it could be a partner, it could be a customer. In new markets, important to move in a measured manner, because at the end of the day you're putting money on the table.
Mr. Mehta, already you have a large presence in Oman and you are looking to expand to other countries, but you were mentioning sometimes there are a lot of exchange fluctuations that kind of set your plans array.
Cost involvement in executing any project is a major factor. With the limited resources for any SME, while going into a new country where there are no bank facilities available, then we are dependent on the home country from where, like we are dependent on India.
Sure.
And our banking facilities here.
Sure.
But many countries demand banking facilities in that particular country. So the costing is double. We spend once here, we spend once in that country. And then opening a letter of credit or something from India, which many times their bankers do not agree, and we end up in escalation in costing.
Indeed.
And then we are not competitive with other companies. That is what is a problem for us.
No, you're absolutely right. I think amongst various challenges that SMEs have to contend with, this is clearly a live and real issue. That's why when you think of moving outside and setting up operations, it's important to be very strong in your home market, because that's the base on which you're actually able to make that plunge outside. You will find one thing, the startup costs are high, right? Particularly the challenges that you just mentioned would be higher probably in the first year. But I would believe that as you pass through that phase, when you actually executed one or two projects, you will find clearly a change in stance from people who deal with you, customers, more and more customers. You build your own brand, you build your credibility, you've got a track record, and gradually that enables you to leverage that track record and get your cost structures down. You learn the nuances, you know how to handle costs better. Sure. Your operations become more solid, more visible for bankers, and that certainly brings down costs. So yes, I agree, the first initial phase is where you have a little bit of difficulty in managing these aspects. But I think over a year, 2 years, these things start normalizing.
True.
One should factor this as a part of
in first year it was considered as a risk.
Yes.
Local lending institutions were considering it as a risk for the rating.
Yes.
And
I'm sure the experience in a year or two after that is very different.
Changed a lot. Yes,
that's right. That's the point I'm making.
Making your own, setting a track record for yourself also helps all kinds of institutions.
And he was able to do this because he had a strong base in India.
Which comes back to your original point of SMEs should have a strong base in their home market, and then using those strengths to go abroad.
ICICI is one of the largest private sector bank in India. they should have some reserve funding for SMEs to go and explore business opportunities abroad. Some special support is required, because if you consider it as a risk in first year, then not too many people are trying and going abroad.
No, certainly it's the way we look at these opportunities are we love to work with our companies. We've been doing it for several years. Many of our companies decide to do business in India. We do business with them in India. There are some who decide to do business overseas. I think we've partnered with them in a very big way, not a small way at all. And the way we are networked, the way we are our distribution is, I think we have a very good footprint overseas. We have a presence in 17 countries
your new
outside of India. Yeah, we've recently set up operations in South Africa, in Johannesburg, and China earlier this year. So I think we are present. That's one contribution that we have done, so that investment that we've done, so that we are able to partner with our customers as they go outside, not just while they're going out, but actually when they set up shop there.
And I'm sure they will continue supporting you and many other SMEs here. Thank you so much, Mr. Chandok, for coming on the show. Thank you, Mr. Mehta, for being here. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned to the series as we continue the 10th edition of the Emerging India series. From the entire team, many thanks for watching.
Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.